We tailor 95% of our apologetics to 4% of the American population who claim to be atheists.
I am spiritual, not religious. It's a modern phrase with surprisingly deep roots. Let's talk about it with Michael Horton on Steve Brown, etc.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome Steve Brown, etc.
And we're so glad you're here. We recognize that it is a major gift to give an hour of your time in a busy schedule, and we consider it a high and holy compliment. So we're glad you're here. You always have a seat at our table. We just don't let you talk. And if you're wondering, I'm Steve, the aforementioned old white guy. Matthew Porter is our executive producer. He's here, and call him a snob. But when it comes to the Passion of the Christ, Matthew thinks the book is better.
just me.
Right. Our producer, Jeremy's in the little glass booth. Jeremy says he's an amazing musician. He plays several instruments, but he refuses to suffer for his art. He's only willing to suffer too many tacos.
That's true. I will suffer many a taco.
Listen, I don't write this stuff. I just read it. Our one-man IT department, John Myers, is in the tech bunker. We're approaching Halloween, so I assume John's Christmas light display, which rivals Disney's, is almost complete. And as we get closer to Christmas, we'll show you some pictures. And Dr. George Bingham is the president of Key Life. George says you can tell it's fall in Florida by the leaves, because by October, the last tourist leaves. And Kathy Wyatt is the soft, feminine side of the program. Kathy cooked us all breakfast yesterday morning. And so we're going to be particularly nice to her with a fond hope that she will do it again.
Well, you didn't eat any of it, so I don't know how you would know if it was good, bad, or indifferent.
My problem is, if I eat breakfast, I'm hungry all day. So it's something I skip for the sake of my stomach. Not queasy stomach, big stomach. Our guest is one of my favorite people, Michael Horton. He's the J. Gresham Machen Professor of Systematic Theology and Apologetics at Westminster Seminary in California.
Wow.
And as an aside, I was on the board of Westminster Seminary in Philadelphia when we decided to start a seminary in California.
Wow.
And that was before Michael was ever born.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, right. He is also the founder of Sola Media. You're kidding. And its various projects, including White Horse Inn, heard all over the country, a radio show, and Michael's new book, which I hold in my nicotine-stained fingers, is called Shaman And Sage, The Roots of Spiritual but Not Religious in Antiquity.
What?
I don't know. Michael, I think I love this book, but we've been talking around the table, and, well, there's certain classical pieces that are beautiful, but you can't hum them. And there's certain books that are incredible, but you don't use them in a small group study in your local church. And this is one of them. And so we all read your book, at least the introduction, and dipped into other places. And we decided we didn't understand a word. Actually, we did, and it's a really, and I'm kidding. This is an important issue, and this is a major book, the first of 3 volumes. One time, John Frame, whom you know, Michael, asked me to do a blurb for the cover of one of his Systematic Theology, the 3rd volume. And I read all 800 pages, every word. And I wrote for the cover of the book, I trust John Frame. So, Michael, I want you to know I trust you, even if I don't understand you. But if you don't keep the fodder down low during this program, it's gonna be awful. Your book is, of course, because it's what you do, and a lot of your books aren't. They're very popular books for the wide church of God's people, but this book is academically ordained and oriented. I meant to say oriented, but ordained works if you're a Calvinist. Yeah, right. But its message is for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And first, let me say, Steve, you're my hero. You know, you've been around long enough to. I think I was 4 when I read you.
Chuck Goldson said on this broadcast shortly before he died that if he knew that he could smoke and live as long as I have, he never would have stopped. Back to the question. This is an important subject. Talk about it.
Well, yeah, it is because, I'm trying to understand where we got here with this whole spiritual, not religious phenomenon. And I kept pulling the thread, and like it went down the rabbit hole. No one could pull me out. No one loved me or cared for me enough to pull me out and say, stop wasting your sabbaticals on this project. So far, we're really selling the book, I realize, but it really is a labor of love. I have been interested in this phenomenon at a practical level as a minister because I see it all over the place. And as a father, I see it with my own family. My kids are, they dabble in stuff that I never even was exposed to. And I think that, while people are talking about all kinds of moral issues, the deeper questions are why aren't people finding fulfillment in Christianity anymore? Why are people looking for love in all the wrong places? Why are people looking for fulfillment in themselves? And this whole idea of the divine self within, where does that come from? Because the whole spiritual, not religious phenomenon is built around, if you look at the surveys, they all say similar things, built around the idea that no one outside of me is going to tell me what's true. I'm going to look within. I've got this little divine whatchamacallit inside me that tells me right or wrong, true or false, and I'm just going to follow my heart. And this is if you're going to get rid of this secularization trend, what you're going to have to do is get rid of the dogma of the autonomous self, that I am my maker, my creator, my redeemer. And if I just look deep enough within myself, I'm going to find gold. And, we come, our dear friend Rod Rosenblatt, the late Rod Rosenblatt, used to say that it's actually more like a miner. The deeper you go, the dirtier you get.
Oh, yeah. Listen, if you guys have that view, this book's going to fix it. And I'll tell you something else that will fix it, too. When the doctor says you have terminal cancer, See how being your own God works. When you're staring the grim reaper in the eyes, see how that works. When your life falls apart, see how that works. But meanwhile, if you're interested, go to this book and spend the time that it'll take to get through it. This isn't new, is it? We get the idea that everything is new and that the church started with Billy Graham, but it didn't, and neither did this heresy. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, if you want to go all the way back, isn't it exactly what Satan told Adam and Eve? You know, in the day you eat of it, you shall be like God, knowing good and evil. And this so when Eve saw that the fruit was pleasing to the eyes and desirable to make one wise, so she just decided on her own autonomously, this is going to give me fulfillment. This is going to bring me fulfillment.
Oh, man.
And Adam, right along.
Hold it. Hey, Michael, you're in the radio business too, so you know what a teaser is. You have just become one. On the other side of the break, we're going to look at the history of nonsense. And it is a long history, as Michael said, beginning in the Garden of Eden. The book is Shaman and Sage, The Roots of Spiritual but Not Religious in Antiquity. And we're going to check out Antiquity on the other side of the break. Like Jesus, we'll return. So glad you're here, and we really are. We're talking to my friend Michael Horton. Michael's new book is called Shaman and Sage, The Roots of Spiritual but Not Religious in Antiquity. And speaking of antiquity, before the break, I asked Dr. Horton if he would talk about some of the history. We have a tendency to think that everything is new, and very few things are new. And he started with the Garden of Eden and says that's where it started, and it did. But man, it's been everywhere, hasn't it, for a long time?
It really has, Steve. As I say, I kept pulling the thread, and it went back so far. I could only go back so far. So I went to the 6th century BC, when lots of scholars say a major shift happened where you had religions that were state religions. They were part of a city. These are our gods. They're the ones who founded us. They created us. We're the navel of the universe. This city is the capital of the world. It's where the gods join us for dinner, and we feed them. We take care of the gods. Well, what happened in the 6th century BC was people got tired of that, and they wanted a more theological or philosophical religion. They discovered the soul. They discovered the afterlife, that now they're wondering what's going to happen to me when I die. And the guy who solved that problem in antiquity was the shaman. Now, today we would call that person maybe a magic man, but then he was he was a guy you went to solve all your problems. He was your psychologist. He was your he was your witch doctor. He was your philosopher, and basically he was a god himself. So he went through the 3 worlds, from hell to this world to heaven and back again. and he could conjure souls. He could bring back your aunt for a conversation and that sort of thing. So people kind of said, well, now that's interesting. That I could talk to my aunt is more interesting than we're going to have a festival next week to offer some sacrifices to placate the gods. And so it became a very personal religion, very magical, very, today we call it New Agey. But that came into Greece. It went everywhere. I mean, this is the beginning of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Zoroastrianism, and all the while the prophets are warning in the Bible. The Hebrew prophets are warning against these trends. The magician, the diviner, and so forth. But all across these cultures, people want magic and they want answers to their questions about the afterlife. So you have mystery religions rise up. And these philosophical religions take over all the way from India to Eastern Europe, from the Black Sea down to Egypt and into the Greek world. You have these shamans come to town who are divine figures. They're worshipped as gods, and they bring philosophy. Philosophy then was spirituality, a way to heaven. And so they're kind of evangelists without a gospel, but they're coming to tell you how you can be saved from this body, this horrible flesh, this body that you have. The divine self is you're a spark of divinity, but it's trapped in your body. And so your goal in life is to find your inner unity with the divine all. And if you can just do that, you can avoid all of the pains and sorrows of embodiment, meditation, philosophical doctrines that emphasize the priority of spirit stuff over material stuff. I love C.S. Lewis's line, God likes matter, he invented it. But people in this tradition don't like matter. And the most extreme version of this within Christian circles historically were the Gnostics. A heretical sect that said that Jesus only appeared to have a body. God can't become flesh. That's ridiculous. It's like saying God became evil. And why would he come to die for our sins on a cross? He can't die on a cross. And resurrection, well, why would we even want that? I forget whether or not he rose bodily. Why would we want to rise with him? Why would we want these bodies forever? That's bad news, not good news. So the Gnostics were the greatest threat to Christianity, more than Roman persecution. It was that Gnostic heresy, and we have that continuing throughout church history, exploding at various times. It fit perfectly with that whole phenomenon of the 6th century BC as it entered Greece. It was called Orphism, if anybody cares. I increasingly don't care.
But it only took you about 600 pages to get there, right?
You realize you could just make up words right now, and we're like, oh yeah, I'm going to write that down.
But I needed to find that for myself. That's the thing. So I had to spend all that ink just to discover for myself how irrelevant it is. But no, seriously, it's basically the Gnostics conformed the Christian message to that pagan Greek outlook. And even though Christianity repudiated Gnosticism, you still had it in a kind of Gnostic light form in monasticism. And you find it in the mystics of the Middle Ages, the Anabaptist movement. in the 16th century was just straight up Gnostic. Very spiritual, inward, no external authority. The people who wrote the first criticisms of the Bible, the first catalogs of supposed contradictions in the Bible, were Anabaptists in the 16th century.
Oh, man. So, if you think that what you are now, spiritual but not religious, is new and cool, first, it's not cool. And as Dr. Horton has pointed out, it's certainly not new. It's been around a whole long time. And you can file it under the fall. You can call it sin. And if you want to be truthful, that's what you'll do. Hey, you're very fortunate to be here today. We've got a great conversation going on with Dr. Michael Horton and his new book, Shaman and Sage, The Roots of, quote, Spiritual but Not Religious in Antiquity. You can keep up with him at solamedia.org or on social media at solamedia.org. We just learned, and it was amazing, Michael, the way you went over the history of this in a way I could understand it. I feel like I have received an education in 5 minutes and see where and the problem is, as Michael says, is us thinking we're God. When you do that, in thunderstorms, it's quite dangerous.
Michael, when we get books for interviews, the first thing I always do is just go to the table of contents and look at the chapters to see if there's a particular chapter that might be of interest to me. I didn't do that with this. Well, I did do that with this, and I was completely confused. So I decided to go to the introduction. And that was almost worse because that's the longest introduction I've ever seen. But there's so much information in there. But in the very, very beginning, I just wanted to ask you this question. I hope it's not too far off the general subject matter of the book. But you talk in the very beginning, you talk about the rise in interest in this country as well as, but anyway, in this country. About in the subject of that which is sacred, and then you go on and you talk about how, which I thought was fascinating. You said that the number of, and then you start talking about different things that people are in this country are latching onto, different spiritual things, and you said that the number of U.S. adults who believe in astrology right now is greater than the combined membership of all mainline Protestant denominations. And then you said that Wicca is technically the fastest growing religion in America. And I'm reading this, and then I was going on into the different aspects that you actually covered just in the last segment. What is it about these things that, if there's a hunger for spirituality as opposed to just, quote, Christianity, what is it about these various things that people seem to be, to which people seem to be gravitating, that draws them in as opposed to the truth of Scripture?
Mm-hmm. That's a big question, Kathy. We tailor 95% of our apologetics to 4% of the American population who claim to be atheists.
Wow.
And even that 4% claim to be spiritual, not religious. Even that 4%, they're interested in astrology, and they talk about a kind of divine force out there. Okay, never mind that you're not an atheist, but anyway, the problem is not atheism. The problem is, G.K. Chesterton said it best: when people stop believing in the God of the Bible, they start believing in anything and everything. They don't become atheists; they become incredulous. And that's, I think that's what people don't realize. When people talk about the search for the sacred, yeehaw, there's a search for the sacred. Everybody's interested now in the sacred. Actually, what they mean is Baptists and Methodists are interested in becoming New Agers.
Wow.
Really, it means that people are moving from sort of more orthodox or traditional forms of Christianity and other religions toward a looser, I don't have any obligations here. I don't have to believe what I don't want to believe. I don't have to do what I don't want to do. You do you, I'll do me. And that kind of outlook doesn't sit very well, does it, with the God of Abraham? So really, what we see throughout history is you've got the native religion of the West, paganism, which says I'm God, and this little divine thing inside me I'm going to follow, and then you have the religion of Abraham that says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one, and you shall have no other gods besides me." And you're going to have to, he gives you a law, but he also gives you a gospel. And both of those are outside of you. You didn't make this law, and you didn't make this gospel. He so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. God made the gospel. Jesus is the gospel. And the thing is, if you don't believe that God can judge you outside of you, then you can't believe that God, that judge, can save you from his own judgment either.
So good. But it's intolerant. I did notice that about you.
Very dogmatic, I know.
Looks like you could be a little bit more open to some new ideas.
It's just true for him.
Good heavens.
I do me, Steve. You do you.
Hey, listen, this book is so good. If you like what Dr. Horton is saying, and it's incredibly profound and true, you got to get it. Shaman and Sage. Hey, this is hard work. We're going to rest up, but we're coming back. Thanks for spending time with us. By the way, have you heard about Key Life Connection? That's the name of our weekly email. It's free, so you can't complain. Easily worth twice that price. So while you're thinking about it, go to keylife.org/subscribe to check it out. And we're hanging out with Dr. Michael Horton. His book is Shaman and Sage, The Roots of, quote, Spiritual, Not Religious in Antiquity.
Michael, you said a phrase a little bit earlier that was very familiar, New Age, which I don't hear that phrase too much anymore, but growing up in the 80s and 90s, you would always hear that. And at that time, it was this thing that's like out there, like New Age. And I picture some Stevie Nicks type character collecting turquoise in Santa Fe or something or other. You're like, okay, I see what that is. Okay, have fun. But like you said, it's no longer any kind of separation. This kind of like there's part of divine. It's just we're swimming in it, right? There's no avoiding it. So how how insidious is this? Have you seen this creeping in to the church with like therapeutic gospel, or have you seen what does it look like when pastors or church leadership leans into this shamans and sages lane?
Hmm. Well, yeah, unfortunately, it's not something that's entering the church. It's something that's been in the church for ages. It's always waiting there, hibernating, waiting to come out and stalk us again. I think that you mentioned the therapeutic gospel. Yeah, everything, all of the stuff that is about finding salvation inside of me, having your best life now, uh, name it, claim it, whatever. You have the power inside of you that God has. Um, you are in your inmost being part of God. That kind of message, I think you get all over the place. You can go into churches that claim to be biblical and Bible preaching and Bible teaching, and you'll find people in the pew who will say, "Well, I just believe because I had this liver shiver experience inside me, or I just believe because, well, I follow my heart, or I just it's something that really jibes with something deep inside me."
Mm.
And the thing is, again, I got to quote G.K. Chesterton. He said, "It would probably be an exaggeration to say that Jesus came into the world to destroy the doctrine of the inner light, but only a little exaggerated." He says, instead, you've got God coming with banners blazing and trumpets sounding and an army descending on earth saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards people." This is you know pietists used to sing, it doesn't matter if Jesus was born in Bethlehem. What really matters is that he's born in your heart. And I just don't have the plumbing for giving birth to God incarnate.
Mhm.
I'm not an incarnation of God. There's one incarnation. People talk about living, incarnationally and so on and so forth. Okay, I get what people are saying, but I don't live incarnationally. I am embodied already. God became incarnate. Let's say the incarnation for God. We just keep wanting to make ourselves stars of the show. And we got to look outside. We find our look, the good thing the law does is stand outside of us and tell us there's absolutely no hope in us. It takes all the wind out of the sails of this divine self within me. Deep down, I'm a good person, yada, yada, yada. The law says, no, there's none righteous, no, not one. But the gospel is outside me too. So I don't have to look inside me to try to find, something good I did last Friday for somebody that God might take notice of. I look outside of myself to what God does in history. And that's not, well, I'm a Christian because it feels good or because it works for me or because I do, that's what I do. It happened. Deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Michael, I mean, you answered a lot of the questions as we've gone around the table that I had, but going back to that period in history, the century, I guess, BC. And you referred to it as the axial age, which was new to me and interesting. And then you mentioned that there was that suggested one point in time, and then that included China and India and Greece area, and then soon after that, Jesus was born and kind of came into the world. And then you suggested that's not necessarily, just from your perspective and your research, a one-time kind of thing, but there's a sense of cyclical. You called it the locative and utopian. Are we coming through a time possibly where there's that bigger universal movement that's more than the average? And what would that reflect in terms of the church's ability to speak to this Gnostic kind of perspective, or possibly the return of Jesus?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about the latter.
Do that
but
in 10 seconds.
yeah. No, a lot of the people who actually are all for this axial age are into it because they believe it is a new wave, that this is happening, and I agree with them. I think it is. I just disagree that it's a good thing.
Well, it's good. Well, we're all growing quickly intellectually. I'm going to go back and read the book and see if I understand it this time. Shaman and Sage, the roots of, quote, spiritual but not religious in Antiquity. This is not a book that will fit well with your small group book study. It just won't work. But you get it, you read it, and take the time necessary, and you will be better for it. Hey, don't go away. I thought we had another segment, and everybody just jumped on me and said, no, that was it. I don't know where this went. This is great. Michael Horton does that in an incredibly profound and thoughtful way, and he does it in this book. Michael, I know how busy you are. I've been there and done that, the seminary thing, and we appreciate your taking your time to be with us today, and you get 3 free cents for having done it.
Hey!
You're way behind, and you got a problem, but you get the 3 anyway. Michael, thanks. You're great, and we appreciate your spending this time with us.
What an honor and a pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks,
Guys.
Kathy. Thanks, Matthew.
You got it.
Y'all, this is an important subject. It really is. We're in a kind of squishy time. When whatever you believe is fine as long as you believe it. All roads lead to the same place if you're sincere. Learn to meditate and be quiet, and you'll see God in your heart. You know, that stuff sounds so good, and even when I say it, I think to myself, that's not bad. Maybe the next step is that they'll find Jesus. Probably not going to happen. It's not a good road. So if you're there, do some reading, do some research. Better yet, get a Bible. Who was it that said at the beginning of the program they liked the Passion of the Christ, but they liked the book better? I think that was you, Matthew. And the book is better. Spend a little time with a letter that was written to you by the God of the universe and is filled with true truth that will change your life. Michael Horton is a gift to the body of Christ, and he was a gift to us today on this program. And whoever will be here next week will be a gift to us too, hopefully. Kathy? Who's going to be here next week?
I'd like to just kind of leave you there for
right.
a second. A new friend to Steve Brown, etc. Her name is Gretchen Ronovic, and her book is titled Ragged, Spiritual Disciplines for the Spiritually Exhausted. And don't be fooled by the title, because a lot of times, we think, here comes somebody who's going to give us 10 things to do to make us spiritual. And she was absolutely wonderful. We really liked her a lot.
And she lives on a farm, doesn't she?
She does.
5,000 acres.
Yep.
So she knows what's manure and what isn't. Guys, we got to go. But we're coming back same time next week, same place. Between now and then, don't do anything we wouldn't. And that gives you a wide, wide berth.
That was an interesting segue.